Geeks and geekettes, gats and kittens, ladies and gentlemen, moviegoers the world over, and book lovers as well. Welcome to another edition of Ask Chuck Dixon. This is a very special edition. I'm calling it an extra because it will focus on Levon Cade. A lot of you asked questions. I solicited for questions. A lot of you asked questions about the Levon Cade books and the movie A Working Man, and I thought this would probably be a good time to jump in and answer those questions. Currently, as I speak, the movie is number 2. It was number 1 at the box office last week, number 1 in a number of countries, Germany, Australia, Mexico, which came as kind of a surprise to me, Portugal, New Zealand, the UK, happy about all that. And this week we're at number 2, which was to be expected. Minecraft crushed us, even worse than we crushed Snow White last week. But my producers, the money men, the Brain Trust, they told me this is a good thing. This is why they positioned this movie the way they did, because they thought, hey, when Minecraft comes along the second week to utterly blow us out of the water, people are going to go to the multiplex to see Minecraft, and a lot of those theaters are going to be sold out. And they're going to go, well, we're at the movies. We bought our popcorn. Let's go see A Working Man. And apparently it worked out because we did pretty good this weekend, both here and overseas. Still waiting for China to come in. That should be a big number. So, we're sitting pretty enough to greenlight a sequel. So we're in good shape. But the thing I'm happiest about is we crushed Snow White with a Jason Statham movie, with a mid-budget Jason Statham movie. That's so cool. I will wear that like a crown the rest of my life. So hold on a second here. I had to make a technical adjustment. So anyway, let's get to your first question. Now, I got a lot of questions that were all the same question. So I'm going to not, I have some individual questions, people who are unique enough to ask a question no one else was asking. I'll answer them first, and then I will get to your group questions and further analysis of the book and the movie. Tommy Morris, brand new Levon Cade fan. Question 1, was Levon's name in any way inspired by the Elton John song? I asked because of the lyric, Levon wears his war wound like a crown. Yeah, certainly the pronunciation. Levon, to me, is it's a biblical name, and I wanted my character to have, because he's from the Deep South, Scots-Irish ancestry, Church of Christ, God-fearing people. He comes from God-fearing people, so he would have a biblical first name, and I'll get more into the pronunciation of his name. But Levon, the Elton John song, I like that song. It didn't directly inspire Levon Cade, but I liked the name. Also, Levon Helm, the drummer for the band. So there were 2 Levons there that made me say, that's a cool name. That's a cool name. I'm going to go with that one. But not directly inspired. It wasn't like I heard that song and went, hey, I'm going to write 12 novels based on this character on this one line. Okay, so Tommy gets a twin spin. As he indicated, that was only his first question. Tommy Morris is back again with, the film had some wackiness in it. I was not sure if it came from you. He hasn't read the books yet. I know this because I just sold him a bunch of the books. The Black Widow biker gang obsessed with the Game of Thrones didn't feel like you, nor the odd trans Russian with the machine gun. Holly Weird will fill any gaps you leave them. Did you write in Frank Miller and his fedora? No, I did not write Frank Miller into this book. Some of the attire worn by the bad guys, that wasn't me. I didn't do a lot of description. The 2 guys in the van scene, By the way, there's going to be spoilers all through this, so look out if you haven't seen the movie or read the books. The two guys in the van, that van fight, which is right out of the book, I just said that they were in running suits. I didn't say they were in outrageous running suits, but I kind of like that. I laughed when I saw them first get out of the car. I was like, yeah, that's a good choice. The crazy running suits and the silly hats they were wearing. And so that was fine. Some of the other craziness in the movie, yeah, not me. That was not me. Some of the odd choices, like some of the characters looked like they were going to the opera in 1895. Yeah, that wasn't me. But these are the choices you make. Now the trans guy, that wasn't too far off the mark, because in the books, that guy and his partner, were gay. So, which we had to change that for the Russian edition of the book. They didn't want that in there. So yeah, that I didn't so much leave the room as made a suggestion that they went all the way with. Triple spin. Tommy's back again, and he earned this. He earned this triple spin. This one's one from my son Logan. What did you have to do with the character who looked like the Monopoly Man and Burgess Meredith's unnatural baby? Imagine if they had changed his voice to more of a droopy dog. I went to duty this time. Did not seem Dixonish to me. No, once again, your son spots something that wasn't me. That character kind of surprised me too. That character does not exist in the book at all. He is an invention for the movie. I write books, they make movies. They know what they're doing for the most part. I'm trying not to laugh here. They know what they're doing for the most part. Okay, Kenny Todd asks, is or was there a long-reaching plan or story for Levon? Or was it book to book, let's see? Also, when you create a character like Levon, is there an end for the character? Not asking what it is, but is it something you know when you start? When I wrote the first book, it was to scratch my Punisher itch. I wanted to create a character, but I wanted him to be different. I wanted him to have different motivations, different stakes in his life. Create a brand new character. And I think I largely succeeded. I mean, I'm satisfied that he's not like any other vigilante character out there. And he's kind of, the basics, but his motivations are stronger to me, other than just revenge. He reacts rather than acts. He's defensive rather than preemptive. I did know generally that I wanted him to cause enough trouble in the first book that he would be at odds with the law. That's something I've mentioned before in other shows, that I regretted that I didn't have recurring cop characters or federal agent characters who were hunting Frank Castle when I wrote The Punisher. Garth Ennis did it, and I slapped myself in the head when I saw it, and I said, why didn't I ever think of that? But Garth did, and he got a lot of mileage out of it. He got a lot of good story and grist, and also it fitted Frank into more of a real world situation and created an ongoing threat, because Frank kills all of the bad guys. So he never really has any ongoing threats. The ongoing threat for him would be the law. And that's what I wanted for Levon. I wanted his greatest danger, not fear, because he never seems to be afraid of anything. The greatest danger, the greatest threat to him and his family is the law. And if you've read the series, you'll see some of that play out. And that the threat from the law is very, very real. Now, where I wanted to go with the character, I knew I wanted to do a Die Hard story for the second book. And I knew I wanted to set it in Maine. I knew I wanted to write a story in which his car gets stolen and he has to get the car back. There's reasons, not just because it's a car, but because what's in the car. I wanted to write a chase story, which was Levon's run of him and Mary, on the run with bad guys and good guys, both on his tail. A lot of these I came up with the titles first. I knew I wanted to do a prison story called Levon's Time. Where he went to prison, how he got to prison, how he got out, no idea. I just thought Levon's Time, prison story. Because see, I was trying to make every book different. There's no Levon Cade formula. I wanted to make every book very, very different. I knew I wanted to do a book called Levon's War, in which he went back to either Afghanistan or Iraq. And just before I started really thinking about Levon's War, stuff was cooking in Mosul. This is after we had withdrawn, and I thought, well, that's where I'm setting the story. He's going to go back to Mosul to help a guy who helped him when he was in Iraq, and he made a promise to him that nothing would happen to his family. And so I knew that. And then I knew that I was going to write an extensive story. It became a trilogy of books within the series of Levon seriously going after a child trafficking ring. Because it's so much in the news, and it pisses us all off. If you're a normal red-blooded person, stuff makes you angry that there are these, people who prey on children in one way or another who just always seem to get away with it. So I wanted, that's what these vigilante stories are. They're cathartic. They make you, they're wish fulfillment fantasies for adults, generally adult men. What if someone did something about this with a flamethrower and a sledgehammer and a lot of explosives? Generally knew where I was going. The more difficult part for me, the more challenging part for me is, what is Mary's story in this? Because I didn't want Mary to be that kind of character. You've seen this in TV shows and movies where they introduce a baby or they introduce a dog, and when it's convenient, they just simply ignore the baby, ignore the dog if it's going to get in the way of a story. I did not want Mary to be like that at all. I didn't want her there as a convenience. I wanted her there as a living, breathing character that Levon thinks about 24 hours a day. And so coming up with Levon stories was not as much of a challenge for me, but telling the often parallel stories of Mary and what's going on with her, a little bit more challenging because I don't happen to be an adolescent girl. So I had to think up, what can I do to make her life interesting without it seeming opportunistic or contrived or inorganic. You want these stories to happen naturally. You want these stories to grow out of real circumstances. Rockford Files, the television show, taught me that. If you ever watched Rockford Files, he was a private eye, but they never did the standard private eye story where somebody comes to him with a problem and then he has to solve it, and then the mystery goes deeper and deeper as he learns more and more facts. They never did that on Rockford Files. Rockford Files, an episode might start with his car being repossessed, and that leads to the action. Him going to a detectives convention, things like that. So the producers of Rockford understood that we all knew the private eye genre, and so you had to find a new way to approach it. You had to find a new way into the story, and that's what I wanted to do with Levon. That's what I wanted to achieve, that there was natural, organic ways that Levon got into the story. It wasn't like Murder, She Wrote, where it seems like every week one of her friends or acquaintances is found murdered. I wanted it to be more organic. And I did it in such a way. Now you're going to say, well, Levon seems to get in an awful lot of trouble. He seems to get a lot of shootouts and gets a lot of criminals pissed off at him and everything else. Well, I wrote the stories in such a way that he could have walked away. He didn't have to help his brother out. He didn't have to do this. He didn't when his cousin came by looking for his little boy, he could have said, yeah, I'm busy. But he stepped up and helped. He got involved. And so for me, that was an organic entryway into the story. And I know I gave you a lot more answer than you were looking for, or maybe not enough. Who knows? Okay, next question. Bat Neil, I've left his email up here so you can bitch at him. Are you going to buy a big old boat? If so, you should name it Levon's Paid. Yeah, I'm not really a boat guy. Oh, I live in Florida. I live near the water. Everybody in Florida lives near the water. I live near lakes. You look at the map of my area, you wonder how there's enough land to live on. There's so many lakes. But yeah, I'm not a boat guy. I think I've been on 3 boats in my whole life, and I think 2 of them were ferries. Yeah, not a strong swimmer, not a boat dude. So no boat for me. Daniel Barber asks, what inspired the Alabama setting in the first book? Largely because, let me check this next image. Nope. Largely because I didn't want it to be an urban guy, and I kind of want to honor the heritage from my dad's side of the family, Scots-Irish, Southerners, deep South, kind of folks. Well, the name Dixon kind of lets you know that. So, and I wanted I wanted them to be different, and also I wanted them to have farmer strength, or something called farmer strength. If you look back across the list of Medal of Honor winners and stuff like that, an awful lot of them were farm guys, or guys who lived in the country, and they had farmer strength. They didn't work out. They didn't do anything like that. They just worked. And when you work like that at a job, hours and hours and hours, it's more of a workout. Working is more of a workout than just a workout, if that makes sense. And these are the tough guys. My father-in-law, he was from Arkansas, and they assumed since he was from Arkansas, he was one of those guys. So they put him in the 10th Mountain Division, because that's where they put those guys, the tough guys. Tough guys could climb up mountains and knew how to work with mules, and it didn't bother them to walk long distances with heavy weights on their back. They didn't know that that my father-in-law was the son of his parents owned a chain of donut places. and they basically drafted him out of a military academy, I guess, which was good. But he's obviously served well. Real proud of my father-in-law. May he rest in peace, for what he did with the 10th Mountain Division in Italy. But those are the kind of guys you're looking for, and that's the kind of guy I wanted Levon Cade to be. I wanted the kind of guy that when Levon goes off and joins the Marines, they see something in him. They see, okay, this guy grew up hard. This guy grew up tough. This guy's a survivor. And that's what Levon is. Even if he hadn't gone into the military, he would have all of these innate skills he learned of woodcraft and weaponry and all that stuff. In addition to the fact that his family was deep into the liquor business. By that I mean illegal liquor business, white lightning. And, so, he knew a thing or two about evading capture and things like that. So it's really why I wanted to set him down there. And also I wanted to show, I know I'm born and raised in Philly and everything else, but, I was raised by a dad who was from the South, and I had a lot of respect for the South, because I'm half Dixie. So, and I wanted a hero, from that region. So there you go. All right. Spoiler alert. Seriously, spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the movie or read the books, and you don't want them spoiled, turn away. Oh, fair warning. Here we go. Okay, what's the difference between the book and the movie? Lots of difference. Lots of differences. Number one, hold on. Well, let me get to it. They race swapped Gunny, and they got David Harbour to play him. In the books, Gunny, he's blind, and he is he's an African American man, and he's much older than Levon. He didn't serve with Levon in the books. Gunny was Levon's one of his trainers at SEER School. And SEER School is where special forces and the CIA send people who are candidates for Delta Force or Green Berets or um, Navy SEALs, and they send them to SEER school. And at SEER school, you're basically put in a you know, it's not even basically, you're put in a prison camp and you're treated like a prisoner, and you're treated rough and you're treated raw. And the point of SEER school is to see if, number one, you can put up with it without complaint, and without physical harm to you, and also see if you can escape. And in the books, you know, Levon escapes from SEER school and holds a record for how long he managed to evade recapture. So Gunny was like an instructor, not a compatriot. Um, so why they switched, I don't know. I guess you know, they have casting meetings and casting agents, and they just, David Harbour was available for a few days, you know, or a week, because he's not in the movie that much. Although audiences loved it, they were really, the producers were very high on the fact that test audiences really liked um, Gunny, and that's why he's included so much in the trailers, even though he's not in the movie as much. The Jenny character in the books, this is the major spoiler. In the books, we see Jenny once, basically just before she's abducted, and we never see her again. Uh, Levon fails in his mission to save Jenny. Now, I can understand why they would change it for the movie. And they made Jenny's abduction and capture and everything else more a part of the movie than it ever was in the book. Jenny becomes an abstract figure once it becomes clear she's been abducted. Now, that's a major change to the book. That makes it an 80s action film as opposed to a 70s action film. The problem with doing that, story-wise, just talking story-wise, remember, the book is the book, the movie is the movie. The problem with doing that story-wise is it takes away from Levon's motivation. I was very careful because I knew my basic plot line was him. He's going to help out his employer, try to find his missing daughter, and you know, did not want to fall into the trap of retelling Taken. And so, in Taken, Liam Neeson's character is all about getting his daughter back, and for Levon, it's all about getting custody of his daughter. Levon takes on finding Jenny as a job, not a mission, not a crusade. It's a job. And I make it very clear in the book that Levon is financially in a corner. He's working security for a construction company. He really doesn't have much of an income. And he's in a fight to get custody of his daughter back from his in-laws. And I established in the book that his wife died of cancer a few years before. In the movie, she died of suicide, which I thought was a little too on the nose. The father-in-law blames Levon for his daughter's death. You know, unreasonably blames Levon for his daughter's death of cancer. And I guess in the movie, they just wanted to, you know, sew that up and make it the father-in-law's motivations even clearer. I don't agree with that, but the book is the book, the movie is the movie. So in the book, it's made very clear he's in a financial corner, and his lawyer informs him, you don't have the money for this fight because your father-in-law, he's a surgeon. He's got more money than God, and he's got a lot of friends in the region. So you're fighting the judicial system, and you're fighting his army of lawyers, and he can keep this going on forever. He can outspend you till doomsday. You know, you don't have a chance of winning custody. And then his employer offers him $50,000 to go find his daughter, and Levon takes it. Now in the movie, they do a little bit of that Joseph Campbell stuff. Now remember, Stallone wrote the screenplay, but there were rewrites, and I'm going to put this in the rewrite category. because Sly's initial effort was very, very faithful to the book. I'll get into that in a minute. Um, the the so there's in the book there's none of this Joseph Campbell stuff. There's no reluctance. He doesn't like, oh, I don't want to do that, which he does in the movie. When his employer offers him $50K, he grabs at it. Yeah, I'll do that, and he goes and does it. Because to me, that seems normal to me. You know, his motivations. The real story of Levon's trade is he wants custody of his daughter. Yes, he wants to find Jenny. Yeah, he's a good guy and he wants to find her, and he certainly works his butt off and kills an awful lot of people and that get in his way in the process. And he does ultimately solve the mystery of her disappearance, but he doesn't save her. And so that's the biggest difference between the book and the movie. Now, I gotta say, of everything in the book and movie, everything in the movie, I was pleased that a number of my action sequences made it whole into the movie. The swimming pool sequence, the fight in the van, I didn't have a fight on the construction yard, but the scene accomplishes the same thing. So, but like I said, you know, there were rewrites. There's always rewrites, and you know, you just got to know that's going to happen. Hold on, I'm not quite there yet. Yeah. Now, one thing I was really, really pleased about was Isla Guy, I think that's how you pronounce her name, was cast as Mary. My biggest fear is they were going to cast some sassy child actor, you know, like the talkback kind of kid that ruins everything. We've all seen movies where a kid ruins the whole damn movie because he's a lousy actor and snarky, and and the tone of the kid's acting doesn't fit the whole movie. Yeah, I'm looking at you, first Star Wars prequel. So I was really nervous. I don't usually get involved in casting. Well, I didn't get involved at all. They didn't ask my opinion one time. But even the casting game, you know, who do you think should play this on movies that I'm not involved with? Like, it's not fun to me. But this one really concerned me. And Isliki, she's an English. I believe she's English. She's been in a whole bunch of BBC stuff. This little girl has got an incredible track record of acting. So I was really pleased when they casted her. Even more pleased when I saw her in the movie, because it was a real chemistry between her and Jason Statham. She hits just the right tone. There's a sweetness. There's a daddy-daughter relationship there, even though it's only in a few scenes. And really, she establishes that with her performance. It's a restrained performance. To me, it's a realistic, authentic performance. She doesn't seem like a movie kid. She just seems like a kid. And I really like that. And as the series goes on, I really hope they can get her back, because Mary plays a much bigger role in the next few stories. Well, throughout the whole series, Mary's role, you know, is much bigger in the story. She's more of a part of what's going on. Here it was kind of a sideshow with her and the in-laws and the rest. But very, very pleased with that casting, and as well as her portrayal. Now, as far as it was original screenplay by Sylvester Stallone. And as I said, it was very faithful to the book. Now, as Sly told me before he started, he said, because he had written 3 episodes of a proposed series for streaming, and they were very faithful to the book. I mean, the dialogue is almost line for line in there, and structured the same way, everything else. When it was going to go to feature film, he says, well, I'm going to adapt it now into a feature film screenplay. And he goes, I'm going to try not to make any changes, but I'm going to tell you right now, he says, we got to open the ending up a bit. And I said, I understand that, because the book, while the book has a satisfying ending to me, it might not be that satisfying as a movie ending. So you're going to want to see more, bang, bang, shoot, shoot stuff at the end. And I said, look, I totally understand that. We're making that kind of movie. You're going to want to see that kind of climax at the end. So Sly said, well, if you're happy with that, then I'm going to start typing away, which he did. And now I never saw his finished screenplay, but I know it was probably pretty accurate to the book. Now David Ayer comes on as director. David Ayer is an Academy Award-winning screenplay writer. In Hollywood, they write, and then they rewrite. And so, he had a hand in it. Who else knows who had a hand in it? Every movie you see has a small army of uncredited screenwriters who, quote unquote, punched up the dialogue or, script doctored or whatever. So I don't know what the process was that this went through, but the screenplay that Sly wrote is significantly changed in the third act. The third act bears no resemblance to what Sly wrote. And so, the end product, the book is the book, the movie is the movie. That's all I can say to you. It's hard for a writer. I didn't realize this. I mean, I'd seen this before where writers would talk about their movie, a movie being made out of their book and how they felt about it and everything else, but I never really understood. And now I do. It's deeply emotional in a weird way. I don't think of myself as a deeply emotional guy, but seeing it, it's like watching your kids grow up. You're proud of them, but they're leaving. They're leaving. You won't see them as often. I mean, this is if you like your kids. I happen to like my kids. They're getting ready to leave home, and that empty nest thing and everything else. Kind of the way I felt with the movie. I never saw it with an audience. My wife keeps saying, you gotta get out and see it with an audience. I said, I really don't want to. I really don't. I would feel like I wanted to shrink in my seat if I watched it with an audience. Maybe I wouldn't, but it's really weird. I don't know how to describe it. It's a very, very weird feeling because yes, I created this, but more people are seeing it in a form that I really had nothing to do with than have read the book. I mean, far more people have seen the movie than have read the book. I hope to remedy that. If you haven't read the books, please read the books. Available everywhere. Kindle, well, not everywhere. They're available on Amazon and at Wolfpack Publishing, audio, Kindle, all the rest. Now, the question everybody wants to know, how do you pronounce Levon? And there it is, Levon. It's not Levin. They emailed me to ask questions about some of the characters' names and stuff. Never asked me how to pronounce his name. I wonder what it was like that first day on set. It's like, how do we pronounce your name? How do we pronounce this? And they landed on Levin, which I don't really understand because it doesn't look like Levin. If it was going to be Levin, it would be an I, not an O. So, just between you and me, I'm really hoping that Levon Cade has the same kind of history that Jack Reacher had. Now, if you remember, they made 2 Tom Cruise Jack Reacher movies, and then Amazon made the series. And because Amazon's already involved here, I'm really hoping that we're going to make the 3 Jason Statham movies. That that was the deal. Three Jason Statham movies, which fine, great, fun. We're all going to have a good time. Jason Statham's awesome. I have no problems with Jason Statham. But then start a series and have the series set in Alabama with him from Alabama. God, if God hears my prayers, Lucas Black will play him. Lucas Black will be in his 40s. Perfect. Already has the accent. And I really want the first scene. Remember on Her Majesty's Secret Service when they introduced George Lazenby as the new James Bond? They do the pre-credit sequence, the James Bond pre-credit sequence. And at the end of it, he says, I wonder if this ever happened to the other guy. In other words, breaking the fourth wall, letting the audience know, yeah, we know that this isn't Sean Connery. Oh, we're acknowledging that. Now let's move on. I really want, if there's ever a Levon Cade TV series, I think I'm gonna have it in my contract that in the first scene, someone refers to him as Levin. He says, "My name's Levon." That is my wish. God, if you're listening, please make that happen. So there you go. These are all your questions, and these last bunch of questions are ones that dozens of you asked. Dozens of you asked the exact same questions. How was the book different from the movie? How do you say his name? How did you feel about the casting? On and on and on. So I didn't want to pick one of you out and give credit for that, because if I give one of you credit, then all the others are going to go, "But I asked that question too." So I just want to be fair. Try and be fair here, my friends. So that's it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for going to the movies and buying a ticket if you did. Thanks for buying the books if you did. And I'll see all of you down the road.